I got introduced to Kanye West when I was around 12 or 13 from MTV. I remember I saw the music videos of Heartless and Love Lockdown almost, regularly. It was always playing, and even though those albums are not very specifically hip hop, I was also just not someone who was listening to a lot of rap music in general. I remember, arguably, 808 is kind of a pop album, but I had only really listened to Eminem back when I was, I was, this was around when I was in middle school, and I, perhaps it's kind of indicative of something that the first like black hip hop artist that I got into was when he was like very poppy music and not very much representative of maybe black culture, arguably. But anyway, so that's apart from all of this. I was so fascinated by the music videos of Love Lockdown and Heartless because of his the artistic approach in which the music videos were all animated and reminded me of Gorillaz. And everyone knew Heartless, even though not many people who I knew growing up, they were not really into hip hop, but they knew the lyrics of Heartless. They knew they could rap it from front to back. And sometime after that, I started exploring Kanye's discography, and I started with College Dropout, and I went forward, and I caught up to it right before My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy came out. I was already caught up with Kanye's music, but I remember I was always very enthusiastic about College Dropout specifically, and of course this morning I listened to it again in context of all these discussions about Kanye West and who he is, and I feel like it's very difficult as a fan to kind of distinguish between the artist and the music and the person who he is, because especially in hip hop, a lot of the times the music is a reflection of one of the perspectives that the person has on the world, and it's very personal kind of thing. So it's like when you're a fan of Kanye West, for example, you can tell based on what he raps about, the things that he is going on in his life, what the things he's thinking about, the things that bother him, the things that he is grateful for and he loves, and it's impossible to really distinguish the two when you kind of become a fan of an artist. Anyway, this morning I listened to College Dropout again, and I just have to kind of reiterate how much I love the album. And I think especially it's very prescient for me right now because I am someone who's about to graduate from college, and all the questions about the purpose and use of college and everything is coming into play. But what I love the most about the College Dropout as an album is that it is so much, you could tell how much love Kanye has for his local community and for his family and for hip hop culture in general. Once you open up with "We Don't Care," and you hear the gospel choirs in the background, we don't care what people say. He's trying to uplift the youth of Chicago and kind of going against the grain of what hip-hop seemed to be moving the direction of at the time, and it was very much part of the politics of hip-hop. If you're not very familiar with Kanye West's influence on the genre, he was butting head to head with, especially for Late Registration because it came out at the same time as one of the albums of 50 Cent, but he was butting head to head with this idea of gangster rap and these kinds of arguably negative connotations with hip-hop music, glorifying the gangster and more violent aspects of it, while Kanye felt that he was always an iconoclast to some extent. He was going against the grain of what was this very negative perception of hip-hop music and trying to make music that was uplifting and about loving the community and loving God. In one of my favorite songs, and I think one of the best hip-hop songs of all time, Jesus Walks, he has, so I have to kind of bring it out because the lyric is it's so good. He says so here goes my single, radio needs this. They say you can rap about anything except for Jesus. That means guns, sex, lies, videotape. But if I talk about God, my record won't get played. Next time I'm in the club, everybody will be screaming out, Jesus Walks. And, just that sense of which he was always kind of iconoclastic and trying to go against what was the image of hip-hop at the time, which was this very, which was about, guns and sex and violence and showing off how much money you have and all this stuff. And, Kanye West very specifically wanted to reinvigorate the image of hip hop, not just with his lyrics, but you can hear it in his use of his production style. Right, he was always someone who takes a lot of sampling from soul music, from gospel music. He was very much in touch with the parts of Black culture that seemed to have been put aside when a lot of hip hop was coming into fruition in the early 2000s, when people kind of had this image of hip hop as this place where I mentioned Eminem earlier, but just the most crass kind of things, and expressing violence towards the police and all this stuff. But he was very much trying to make music that spoke to an alternative way of self-expression that came from, rooted in Black culture, in Christianity, in love for family, love for community, and he's always, in all his music, he always talks about his love for Chicago. And even recently with this whole Trump thing, he said something about how the reason why he wanted to speak to Trump was because he wanted to kind of get him to lower the crime rates in Chicago. Even all this stuff, up to now, he just has so much love. And a lot of the music I remember here, All Falls Down is, I think, one of my favorite Kanye songs. All Falls Down, he kind of talks about this the stereotype, the ways of thinking that he perceived certain Black people have, and how perhaps we should change the materialism and all this stuff, and aggrandization that perhaps he kind of plays into as well when he gets more famous. But it's a great song, and I used to always love Spaceship, Jesus Walks, Never Let Me Down. All these songs are just really expressions of just love, I think. And that's what kind of strikes me a lot with Kanye West. In the College Dropout specifically, he ends the album on a song called Last Call, where he discusses his, how he got to where he is, and how much he struggled, and how he had to, because he started off as a producer and he was making beats for all these different people, but no one was really paying attention to his rapping style and rapping and all this, and he kind of, he ends the album with this 12-minute song where he tries to show that no matter where you're from, it's possible to kind of get success if you just work at it and you are positive and you stick to your principles. And that is kind of what he encapsulates at the end of the album. There's just this kind of idea of mobility that perhaps is it's maybe kind of, it's not as simple as as anyone can get whatever they want if they try hard, but he kind of wants to instill that level of hope, because without the level of hope there will be no trying in general. And his music, at that, he also does, every album is very different. And I woke up this morning and listened to College Dropout again, and I just couldn't help but just remind myself of why I'm such a big fan of Kanye and his music and what he stands for. And I think that I just think this is a great album. And if you've never listened to it, or you feel kind of hesitant about Kanye West as an artist, just try to listen to the album, and you can hear the influence that he had on all these artists recently because of his music. Specifically, of course, Chance the Rapper is completely indebted to Kanye West. But yeah, I just love this album so much. I had to kind of just express how much I liked it, and I listened to it again this morning. And yeah, College Dropout, Kanye West, you should definitely check it out.